Hello! Welcome back to Drunk Storytime with Quefish. I'm not sure what I'm reading yet, but I've got what I've got, unfortunately. I've got beer, and I have some Irish cream. I'm not sure which one I'm gonna drink first. I don't even know if I'll drink both of them. But that's what I have. I'm gonna go find something to read, and I'll be right back. I'm back. Like you knew that I went anywhere to begin with. So I decided to go back to Chamyl's multi-chapter, independent chapter conglomeration story. Not that bad when you get used to it. I'm going to try to get through 2 of her chapters because they're related and they absolutely slay me. Because you read them and you're like, what? Why? And then you read them again and you're like, I know why. Anyway, so chapter 3 of Not That Bad When You Get Used to It. Green Thumb, part 1 of 2. Prompt is sentient plants. While it's true that Crowley has a very tenuous grasp on human language, finding himself spluttering and stuttering all too often, in this particular case, anyone in the world would have been at a loss for words walking into such a scene. Because Crowley has just walked back into his apartment to find Aziraphale stark naked, his skin glistening with sweat, hopefully, hanging upside down in his plant room. A vine around his wrists binds them behind his back, and 2 more vines wrapped around his knees and ankles have him splayed open. The demon can't quite see Aziraphale's front from where he's standing, but he sees his plump, angelic buttocks all right. And there's definitely something going on, and inside his angel, he croaks out. Aziraphale raises his head, or, well, tilts his head back, considering he's upside down, and his mouth falls open. I can explain. Just picturing that on its own is just, yeah, you can explain. Since he now has his own key to Crowley's apartment, Aziraphale thought it would be nice to stop in and leave him a new plant as a surprise. A little thank you for these months together gift. Something colorful, something with flowers. Something Crowley would never dare shouting out, since it's a present from his angel. However, as he steps inside the plant room, Aziraphale finds himself fascinated by a small succulent off to the side. It exudes a very strong demonic aura, but it looks like a deflated football, with black leaves in a circle around it. Oh dear, whatever happened to you? There, you wily creature. I'm sure with a bit of sunlight and water you'll be just... He's cut off by the plant suddenly snapping open and shooting a steady stream of white glittery pollen right in his holy face. Aziraphale coughs and waves his hand through the air, pushing the pollen away. He checks his clothes. He's not dirty. He just has to shake some of that pearly dust off his shoulders and... Fuck. He's pitching a tent in his pants. He starts off in Crowley's bed. A little nap, he calls it. What he ends up doing is rubbing himself against Crowley's silky black sheets until he's made a mess. Oh dear. He sighs guiltily, then immediately switches his effort and goes again, fingering himself until he comes for the second time, biting hard into Crowley's pillow. Next, he locks himself in the bathroom, taking advantage of Crowley's powerful shower head until his knees buckle and he has to hold himself up with a hand against the wet, slippery tiles of the demon's luxurious shower. Dude, You ever used one of those shower heads? He doesn't bother putting back on any clothes. And fuck, he smells just like Crowley when he walks out. The thought is enough to make his head spin, and back to a cock, he jerks himself off while sprawled on the demon's ridiculously opulent throne chair. Oh dear, he mutters to himself, considering the mess he's made, and more importantly, the fact that his erection still isn't going down at all. Then a vine caresses his ankle. Aziraphale considers it for one long moment. He knows Crowley's plants love him. Would he be taking advantage if... Well, what if he was very clear about feeling nothing more than genuine affection for them? What if he only let them do whatever they wanted to him and asked for nothing? Well, doesn't it sound perfectly reasonable? I can explain. He gasps as Crowley walks in, then immediately moans obscenely as a vine caresses his neck and another tightens around his hard cock. The demon stands perfectly still for a few moments, and Aziraphale can just picture him blinking slowly behind those dark glasses of his. Then Crowley takes in a deep breath, raises his shoulders almost up to his ears, and shrugs. Better not, the demon says as he begins undressing. If you can't beat him, join him. Chapter 4, Green Thumb Part 2 of 2. Notes. This only exists because you, the people, asked for it. Did you think I wouldn't sit down and dead-ass write you 2K of extra plant fuckery? I regret nothing. The writer regrets nothing. I don't regret her writing it either. Crowley leaves his floor in a pile on the floor and licks his lips. Aziraphale looks absolutely edible hanging upside down, a drop of sweat slowly sliding down his spine toward the nape of his neck. A fat vine twists between his butt cheeks, and his bound legs twitch helplessly at every thrust. Crowley, The demon circles him, admires the wet, reddened head of the angel's cock poking out from the green currently wrapped around it, steadily jerking him off. Raph? Oh, I skipped a paragraph, I'm sorry. Crowley scoffs. I can't believe I did that. Crowley scoffs. It might be the first time I'm proud of my plants, he mutters to himself. He bites down on his lower lip as his gaze travels along the angel's trembling body and then off to the side of the room, to the deflated succulent in a corner. Had a run-in with Raph, didn't you? Raph? Aziraphale pants out, then whimpers as a vine rolls against his left nipple. Crowley nods, a smirk slowly taking over his face. My infernal rafflesia. Did I pronounce that right? A very useful plant. I'll explain later. So, he runs a hand from Aziraphale's knee to his hip over sleek skin and slowly squirming vines and squeezes. That was a lot of S's. His tone changes drastically when he raises his head and glares at the intricate maze of foliage and branches currently occupying his ceiling. Lower him a few inches. Nothing happens. Crowley quirks an eyebrow. What's this? Are you actually disobeying me, you useless, limp, home-wrecking... My dear, Aziraphale interrupts, a smaller vine creeping along his cheek. They might be a little intimidated by you. He says the last word as his mouth is tugged open by the cheeky creeper. No different than Crowley has done before with his finger. The demon has never been so furious and aroused at the same time in his long, long existence. He mumbles something under his breath. Aziraphale replies around the vine in his mouth something that sounds like, "What was that, Crowley?" Please lower him a few inches, I said. This time, after some rustling, the plants cooperate, bringing Aziraphale down so that his face is level with the demon's embarrassingly hard cock. Another small vine sneaks down the angel's cheek, joins the first one in his mouth. Together, one on each corner of his lips, they keep his mouth wide open for Crowley to take. The demon decides that he'll consider forgiving his plants this time around. He takes a timid step forward, feels Aziraphale's hot breath ghosting on the tip of his cock, and breathes in through clenched teeth. He doesn't fail to notice that the angel's own cock is now within reach of his lips too, the vines pulling back and leaving it bare and glistening. "Angel," he grits out, "is this all right? I don't think I'll be able to stop if I—" "Yes," answers Aziraphale's voice directly into his head. A smart idea, Crowley has to admit, as it'd be hard for the angel to actually talk right now. "Go ahead, Crowley, please don't keep me waiting." "Fuck." The demon swallows, takes the last step forward, and sinks easily into the angel's waiting mouth, wet and velvet soft and hot as hellfire. "Oh, yes," Aziraphale says in his head, and Crowley has to grip the angel's hip to stop himself from already thrusting hard into him. He takes a deep breath. He looks down past his lover's perfect little pink nipples, down at the pale column of Aziraphale's neck, at the delicate muscles under the skin of his throat tensing as the angel tries, uselessly, to swallow around him, around his cock, and the two fat vines filling his mouth. Crowley grinds his teeth as he begins to move. Not that Aziraphale is ever neat about this, but there is something exceptionally filthy about rubbing himself between Aziraphale's tongue and the roof of his mouth while flanked by sleek, rubbery vines on either side. They're soft but firm, warm, and they've just decided to start pulsing against him. Aziraphale's voice in his head keeps calling to him, egging him on, telling him how much he's enjoying this, as if Crowley couldn't already tell from the angel's obscene, shameless moans smothered against the cock in his mouth. The demon curses himself for being so impossibly turned on by the whole thing. He feels Aziraphale's spit dribbling past the angel's lips, down along the base of his cock, down to his balls. Crowley shatters like glass. With a growl, he chokes himself on Aziraphale's cock, hears the angel's gasp, and keeps going, sinks his nails into Aziraphale's ass, and spreads him wide, lets the fat vine penetrating him reach deeper inside. There's a lot going on here. The voice in his head has turned into a litany of "yes, Crowley, yes, yes," over and over. And Crowley reaches down, runs his thumb along the angel's stretched lower lip, along the vine soaked with spit, twisting and squirming against his cock, and he's done for. A low, long moan tears from his throat around the angel's cock, and suddenly he's coming, his whole body ringing with pleasure, filling Aziraphale's mouth with wet pulse after wet pulse. He pulls back as soon as he realizes, makes even more of a mess, paints white streaks from the angel's chin to his cheeks to his forehead. "Fuck, I'm so sorry, fuck." Crowley drops to his knees and grabs his discarded shirt to dab at Aziraphale's face, gasps and almost drops it when the angel's tongue dips out to taste it, seeking out every last drop of it. Crowley runs a hand over his own face as Aziraphale hums in pleasure. "Angel, you just can't do things like that." "You know, Crowley," the creepers leave Aziraphale's mouth a moment before he speaks, and the demon has to squint and wonder just how much control his angel has over them. "I think I might be a little tired of hanging upside down now." As he speaks, the vines holding him up begin to shift. When they stop, Aziraphale's body is parallel to the ground, his front to the ceiling. His hands are no longer tied behind his back. Instead, they're on either side of his head, and he's holding on to the vines as if they were swing chains. Crowley's lips twitch into a smile. He can't believe he thought, for a brief moment, that Aziraphale wasn't running this whole circus. The angel moves along those vines elegantly and confidently, like a bloody trapeze artist, and Crowley smiles like the completely smitten, lovesick fool that he is. Then the vines wrapped around Aziraphale's legs pull the angel's knees up and spread his legs wide open, and Crowley forgets, once again, how to form coherent thought. Since refractory periods are for demons who aren't madly in love with the most gluttonous, spoiled, beautiful angel there is, Crowley opts out of his and strokes his cock to full hardness in the span of a few seconds. Aziraphale tugs on the vines in his hands to lift up his shoulders enough to lock eyes with Crowley. The angel gives him a wobbly little smile, pleasure-drunk, and maybe trying to be embarrassed at his current state for appearance's sake, and failing completely. It's fine. Crowley doesn't want him to be ashamed. Crowley wants him to enjoy himself as much as he possibly can, so he steps forward and gives the creeper currently sliding between Aziraphale's butt cheeks a little slap. "My turn now," he says, and as soon as the plant's out of the way, he pushes in, finding Aziraphale slick and open for him. The angel gives out a little breathy moan, and Crowley sees the creepers responding to it by beginning to stretch towards him. They touch Crowley's hips almost shyly, waiting for permission, or maybe expecting to be shouted at. Crowley figures he might as well let it happen at this point. "Come on," he tells his plants, and he does feel a little pang of guilt at how eagerly, how happily they wrap around his waist, wanting nothing more than to please him. Kind of rings a bell, doesn't it? Good. Nicely done. The vines shake in an altogether different way from what he's used to seeing when he screams at them. Do his plants have a fucking praise kink? They do. Crowley decides that's a question to file away for another time, and focuses on the task at hand. As it turns out, he doesn't need to do much at all. Aziraphale maneuvers his vine swing with grace, like some noble lady in a Rococo painting, and fucks himself on Crowley's cock over and over like the wonderfully hungry thing he is. Crowley wraps his long fingers around the angel's erection, gives it a few sure tugs. He flashes Aziraphale a toothy smirk as he closes his other hand tightly around his plump thigh. "Are you holding back on me?" he asks, already knowing the answer. His hand speeds up and his smile spreads on his face. His voice drops to a growl. "Come on, Angel, you've had your fun. Let me see you now." Aziraphale hides his face in the crook of his arm instead, and Crowley can't help the wave of love that washes over him at the sight. His angel, stubborn to the very end. The unexpected happens then. A vine takes Aziraphale's chin, turns him back towards Crowley. Two more wrap around the angel's chest and slide against his nipples. One tugs at his hair. Another sneaks itself down and caresses his balls with a slick, wet sound. Aziraphale only looks surprised for a split second. Then he's shutting his eyes tightly and coming hard. And Crowley helps him through it with a grin on his face, works him through the desperate shudder after desperate shudder, then forgets about it when the delicious, relentless clenching around his cock rips a second orgasm out of him that makes his knees buckle. The angel leans back with a satisfied, spent sigh, and the vines gently lower him to the ground. Crowley is glad they hold him up a second longer before letting him go, as his legs feel extremely wobbly right now. Aziraphale steps forward immediately, burying his face against Crowley's neck and holding him close. "Oh, darling, that was magnificent." "Yeah." Crowley's voice sounds hoarse and rough to his own ears. Oh, I didn't say that right then, did I? "Yeah." That's better. "Let's get you cleaned up now, and I could use a nap." Aziraphale smiles and nods, takes exactly 2 steps towards Crowley's bathroom before gasping and stopping. "What?" Crowley asks, an eyebrow raised, but he can easily guess, considering the blush on Aziraphale's face and his encounter with the demonic plant. "I'm going to find a mess in there." He nods towards the bathroom. "Aren't I?" "I'm so sorry, dear. It was that plant. I didn't mean to. It just wouldn't go down no matter what I did. Well, it really is quite the dangerous addition to your little forest, if I may. Aziraphale, Crowley says, a small smile playing on his lips. The plant only helps you lean into whatever it is you wanted in the first place. That's how my job works. You, of all people, should know better. He kisses Aziraphale on the top of his blessed head, runs a hand through his mussed curls. For my money, as soon as it realized what you wanted, it gave you a little, mechanical help. Nothing more. Ah, Aziraphale replies, flushing scarlet. Well, maybe so. Either way, about that bubble bath. I did not mention a bath, and surely I did not mention any bubbles. Do you perhaps have any of that marvelous lavender foaming bath left? The plants watch them leave as they slowly go back to their places. A little mopey, maybe, but happy to have participated. Aziraphale stops just before walking into the bathroom, turns around and calls back. Thank you. You were all an absolute delight. Before Crowley drags him toward the bathtub. The plants shake happily in their pots. Some of them quietly bloom. God, I love that. Maybe I wouldn't be taking advantage of him. Thank you. You're wonderful. So if it just kind of like ups the ante on what you already want, does that mean that he wanted to be molested by plants and found? Or is it because there was no other options around that that's what made do? Questions for the ages. Thank you for joining me again for Drunk Storytime with Quefish. Again, this was Not That Bad When You Get Used to It by chamyl.